Maya Chen stood at the entrance of Roosevelt High School, her enhanced cybernetic eye scanning the crowd of chattering teenagers with the same precision she once used to identify enemy targets across alien battlefields. The morning sun felt strange on her face after 3 years of artificial light aboard the human defense fleet. Everything here seemed so small. The war against the Zephyrian Empire had ended 6 months ago. Humanity had won barely after a brutal 8-year conflict that had claimed billions of lives across 17 star systems. Maya had been 14 when she enlisted, lying about her age to join the fight that every human knew would determine their species' survival. Now, at 22, she was being forced to complete her high school education as part of her reintegration program. She adjusted the strap of her backpack, feeling the weight of textbooks instead of plasma charges. Her left arm, a military-grade prosthetic that could punch through titanium plating, trembled slightly as she reached for the door handle. The tremor wasn't from nervousness about facing teenagers. She'd stared down Zephyrian war mechs without flinching. It was the adjustment medication wearing off again. "You must be the new student," said a cheerful voice behind her. Maya spun around, her hand instinctively moving to where her sidearm should have been. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair smiled at her. "I'm Principal Rodriguez. Welcome to Roosevelt High." Maya forced herself to relax. "Maya Chen, I'm here for the completion program." "Excellent. Don't worry. We've had a few veterans come through. You'll fit right in." Principal Rodriguez had no idea she was talking to someone who had single-handedly destroyed a Zephyrian dreadnought or held the line at the siege of Proxima Colony for 72 hours straight. The hallways buzzed with typical teenage energy. Students gossiped about weekend parties, complained about homework, and discussed who was dating whom. Maya felt like an anthropologist studying an alien species. These kids worried about grades and social status while she had memories of watching entire worlds burn. Her first class was American history, taught by Mr. Peterson, a man in his 50s who spoke with the passion of someone who believed his subject mattered. Maya took a seat in the back, hoping to blend in despite her obvious age difference. The other students glanced at her curiously but seemed more interested in their phones than the woman who had helped save their civilization. "Today we're discussing World War II, Mr. Peterson announced. "Can anyone tell me what made this conflict different from previous wars?" Hands shot up around the room. A blonde girl named Jessica answered, "It was the first truly global war, involving multiple continents and new technologies." Mr. Peterson nodded approvingly. "Good, the scale of destruction was unprecedented. Millions of soldiers and civilians died. The use of atomic weapons changed warfare forever." Maya bit her tongue. These people had no idea what real warfare looked like. World War II had been fought with primitive weapons on a single planet. The Zephyrian War had spanned light years, involving weapons that could crack moons and fleets of ships larger than cities. She had witnessed the orbital bombardment of New Geneva, where 40 million people died in 17 minutes. "Can you imagine," Mr. Peterson continued, "the psychological impact on soldiers who survived such horrors? Many suffered from what we now call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They had trouble readjusting to civilian life." A boy named Marcus raised his hand. "My grandfather fought in Vietnam. He never talked about it. Mom said he had nightmares for years." Maya's cybernetic eye focused on Marcus without her conscious command, analyzing his stress patterns and body language. The enhanced neural interface that helped her process battlefield data was still active, cataloging every student as a potential threat or asset. She forced herself to stop, reminding herself these were children, not soldiers. "The transition from war to peace is never easy," Mr. Peterson said. "Imagine trying to care about ordinary problems after experiencing life and death situations daily." The irony wasn't lost on Maya. Here she sat, listening to a lecture about historical wars while her own war wounds were still healing. The bionanites in her bloodstream continued repairing cellular damage from radiation exposure. Her left lung was a synthetic replacement after a Zephyrian nerve gas attack. Her bones had been reinforced with carbon fiber weaving after being crushed in ship-to-ship combat. When the bell rang, Maya gathered her things slowly. Letting the other students file out first, Mr. Peterson approached her desk. "Maya, isn't it? I noticed you seemed thoughtful during today's discussion." "Just listening," she replied carefully. "You know, if you ever want to share any insights about military history, I'd welcome your perspective. Sometimes different viewpoints can really enrich class discussions." Maya almost laughed. Her perspective included memories of melting alien exoskeletons with plasma fire, and watching her squad mates get torn apart by creatures that existed only in humanity's worst nightmares. I'll keep that in mind. Her next class was physics, where Mrs. Kim enthusiastically explained basic principles of energy and motion. Maya had practical experience with faster-than-light travel, antimatter containment, and gravitational field manipulation, but she dutifully took notes about Newton's laws of motion as if hearing them for the first time. Lunch was the hardest part. The cafeteria was a maze of social hierarchies and unspoken rules. Maya sat alone at a corner table, eating reconstituted protein that tasted better than military rations but somehow felt less satisfying. Around her, students complained about teachers, planned for weekend activities, and navigated the complex social dynamics of teenage life. A group of girls at a nearby table discussed their anxiety about upcoming standardized tests. One of them, a redhead named Amber, was nearly in tears about her college applications. Maya remembered being their age and worrying about whether humanity would survive the next Zephyrian offensive. The contrast was almost surreal. After lunch came biology, where Mr. Santos explained cellular structures with the enthusiasm of someone making a groundbreaking discovery. Maya had seen alien biology up close. Creatures with silicon-based nervous systems and methane-breathing organisms that could survive in space. She had watched xenobiologists dissect Zephyrian specimens to understand their weaknesses, but she sketched plant cells in her notebook and pretended to be fascinated by mitochondria. The day ended with English literature, where Mrs. Foster assigned reading from The Things They Carried, a collection of stories about the Vietnam War. The irony was thick enough to cut with her combat knife, which was currently locked in a government storage facility along with the rest of her military equipment. As Maya walked to her assigned parking spot, driving a civilian vehicle felt strange after piloting starfighters. She reflected on the surreal nature of her situation. She was a decorated war hero attending high school, surrounded by children who had no idea their freedom to worry about trivial things had been purchased with blood and sacrifice. Her smartphone buzzed with a message from Dr. Martinez. Her military psychologist, "How was your first day? Remember, this process is about finding your place in the world you helped save." Maya stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Survived day 1. Tomorrow we apparently discuss the Revolutionary War. She drove home to her small apartment, wondering if she would ever truly fit into this peaceful world she had fought so hard to protect. 3 weeks into her high school experience, Maya had established a routine that kept her sanity intact. Wake up at 0500 hours, run 10 miles through the city streets while most civilians slept, shower, dress in the civilian clothes that still felt like a costume, and arrive at school precisely 7 minutes before first period. Punctuality had kept her alive when coordinating orbital strikes. Old habits died hard. The students had started calling her the older girl in whispers, but Maya preferred anonymity. What she hadn't expected was for someone to actively seek her out. "Hey, you're Maya, right?" A lanky boy with thick glasses and nervous energy had cornered her by her locker. "I'm David Morrison. I was wondering if you could help me with something." Maya's enhanced hearing picked up his elevated heart rate. Her combat training immediately categorized him as non-threatening, about as dangerous as a field mouse. "Help with what?" "There's this group of seniors who've been making my life miserable. They cornered me yesterday after school, took my lunch money, roughed me up a bit." David pushed up his glasses, revealing a fading bruise around his left eye. "I know you're older and you seem, I don't know, tough. Maybe you could just walk with me to my car after school? They might leave me alone if they think I have backup." Maya studied him for a moment. In the war, protecting civilians had been her primary mission. The enemy specifically targeted non-combatants to break human morale, and soldiers like Maya had sworn to stand between innocent people and harm. This wasn't different, just smaller in scale. "Show me these seniors," she said. David led her through the cafeteria during lunch, discreetly pointing out a table of 5 boys who looked like they spent more time in the gym than the library. Their leader appeared to be a broad-shouldered kid named Brett Hoffman, whose father owned half the car dealerships in town. Maya watched them for exactly 90 seconds, analyzing their body language, identifying the pack hierarchy, and assessing threat levels. "They corner you after school?" she asked. "Usually by the parking lot. Sometimes in the bathroom if they catch me alone. Maya nodded. Stay close to me for the rest of the week. Don't go anywhere alone. You really think that'll work? These guys are pretty aggressive, and there are 5 of them. Maya almost smiled. She had once held off 200 Zephyrian shock troops with nothing but a damaged plasma rifle and a handful of grenades. 5 high school bullies seemed manageable. The confrontation came sooner than expected. During her next class, chemistry, where she was learning about molecular bonds she could manipulate with her enhanced neural interface, Maya heard a commotion in the hallway. Her combat instincts kicked in before she could stop them. She was out of her seat and moving toward the door before Mrs. Patterson could ask where she was going. In the hallway, she found David pressed against a wall while Brett and 2 of his friends surrounded him. The other students walked by quickly, unwilling to get involved. Standard civilian behavior when facing aggression. Flee rather than fight. Problem here? Maya asked, her voice carrying the authority she'd developed commanding troops in combat zones. Brett turned, sizing her up with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real opposition. None of your business, lady. Keep walking. Maya stepped closer, her movements precise and controlled. Her cybernetic eye automatically calculated optimal strike points. Solar plexus, knee joints, pressure points along the neck. She forced herself to dial back the tactical analysis. These were children, not enemy combatants. I'm making it my business, she said quietly. Oh yeah? Brett smiled, probably thinking he was intimidating. You in what army? Maya's left hand, the prosthetic one with enough grip strength to crush steel, gently touched Brett's shoulder. She applied exactly enough pressure to get his attention without causing permanent damage. Brett's eyes widened as he felt the mechanical strength in her fingers. Just me, Maya said. Now you're going to apologize to David, and then you're going to find something better to do with your time. Brett tried to pull away from her grip and discovered he couldn't. His friends stepped forward. But something in Maya's posture, the way she stood balanced and ready, the complete absence of fear in her expression, made them hesitate. Maya had learned to project lethal competence during the war. It wasn't something she could easily turn off. Let go of me, Brett said, his voice slightly higher than before. Apologize first. You can't just... Maya's grip tightened slightly. Not enough to injure, but enough to make her point. Apologize. Brett looked around, realizing that several teachers had noticed the commotion and were heading their way. Sorry, he muttered to David. Whatever. Maya released him. Good. Now David is under my protection. If anything happens to him, I'll assume you were responsible. Are we clear? Brett rubbed his shoulder, probably feeling the indentations her mechanical fingers had left in his jacket. Crystal clear. As the group dispersed, Mr. Patterson appeared. Everything okay here? Just a misunderstanding, Maya said. All resolved. Later that day, word spread quickly through the school about the new girl who had faced down Brett Hoffman without breaking a sweat. Maya found herself surrounded by curious students wanting to know her story, but she deflected their questions with practiced ease. David found her after school, practically glowing with relief. I can't believe you did that. Nobody stands up to Brett. Where did you learn to do that? Military training, Maya said simply. You were in the military? Like the regular military or... The war, Maya said, knowing he would understand which war she meant. There had only been one that mattered. David's expression shifted from curiosity to awe. You fought the Zephyrians? Actually fought them? For 8 years. That's wow. I mean, I knew veterans were coming back, but I never thought I'd meet one. Especially not one who'd help me with my bully problem. Maya shouldered her backpack. Protecting people was my job. Still is, I guess. As they walked toward the parking lot, David asked, what was it like? The war, I mean. If you don't mind talking about it. Maya considered the question. How could she explain watching entire species fight for extinction? How could she describe the weight of decisions where millions of lives hung in the balance? How could she convey the horror of seeing friends die in ways that civilian nightmares couldn't imagine? Different, she said finally. That evening, Maya sat in her apartment reviewing the day's events. She had successfully integrated herself into the high school social ecosystem, identified potential allies and threats, and established herself as someone not to be trifled with. In military terms, she had secured her operational area and gained local intelligence assets. But as she watched the news, reports about trade negotiations with former Zephyrian colonies, debates about veteran benefits, updates on planetary reconstruction efforts. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a role in someone else's life. The girl attending high school wasn't really her. The real Maya Chen was somewhere in the space between worlds, still fighting a war that everyone else had decided was over. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Torres, her former commanding officer. "Heard through the grapevine you're attending high school. How's civilian life treating you, soldier?" Maya typed back, "Learning to navigate teenage social dynamics. Not unlike small unit tactics, but with more emotions and less explosions. LOL. Remember, Chen, you helped save the human race. High school should be easy by comparison." Maya stared at that message for a long time. Captain Torres was right, objectively. She had survived impossible odds, made split-second decisions that affected the fate of billions, and emerged victorious from humanity's darkest hour. By any reasonable measure, completing high school should indeed be simple. So why did it feel like the hardest mission she'd ever undertaken? The fire alarm wasn't supposed to go off during third period, but Maya's enhanced hearing detected the subtle wrongness in its pattern immediately. 3 short bursts, pause, 2 long ones. That wasn't the standard evacuation signal. It was the emergency lockdown code used by military installations under attack. While her classmates groaned about another drill interrupting their physics lesson, Maya was already calculating exit routes and assessing potential threats. Her cybernetic eye switched to tactical mode, highlighting structural weak points in the classroom walls and identifying improvised weapons within reach. The behavior was automatic, trained into her during 8 years of combat where the difference between drill and reality often meant the difference between life and death. "All right, everyone, you know the procedure," Mrs. Kim announced, gathering her papers with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this dozens of times. "Line up at the door, no talking, walk, don't run, to the designated assembly area." Maya fell into line behind David, who had become something of an unofficial shadow since the incident with Brett. As they filed into the hallway, her enhanced senses picked up details that bothered her. The other teachers looked more tense than usual. Principal Rodriguez was speaking rapidly into her radio, using coded language that Maya recognized from her military communications training. "This doesn't feel like a drill," David whispered. Maya agreed. But before she could respond, the building's public address system crackled to life. "Attention all staff and students. This is not a drill. We are implementing lockdown procedures effective immediately. Return to your classrooms and await further instructions." The casual chatter died instantly. Maya watched as fear rippled through the crowd of teenagers, some of them understanding immediately what a lockdown meant, others still confused. Mrs. Kim quickly herded them back into the physics classroom, sealing the door and switching off the lights. "Everyone move away from the windows," she instructed, her voice steady despite the obvious stress. "Sit on the floor against the far wall." Maya remained standing, her enhanced hearing straining to pick up sounds from elsewhere in the building. There, footsteps in the main hallway, moving with purpose. Multiple individuals, at least 3, possibly more. The rhythm of their steps suggested they were carrying heavy equipment. Her combat experience kicked in without conscious thought. She moved to the window, carefully peering through the blinds at the parking lot below. 2 unmarked vans sat near the main entrance, their positioning strategic rather than random. Professional surveillance or assault team formation. "Maya, get away from the window," Mrs. Kim hissed. Maya ignored her, focusing on the tactical situation. Her neural interface automatically began cataloging resources. 32 students plus 1 teacher in a classroom with 1 exit. No weapons, limited cover. The windows were second floor, but the drop was manageable with proper technique. The classroom had basic chemistry equipment that could be weaponized if necessary. A sound from the hallway made everyone freeze, the distinctive crack of a door being forced open, followed by shouting voices. Maya's enhanced hearing parsed the words. "Where is she? Check every classroom." They were looking for someone specific. Maya's blood chilled as she realized the most likely target. "Mrs. Kim," she said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Have there been any security concerns about me specifically? Any federal agents asking questions, any unusual background checks?" Mrs. Kim stared at her in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "Those people out there, they're not random. They're here for someone, and I think it might be me." David shifted closer. Why would anyone be looking for you? Maya's mind raced through possibilities. During her military service, she had been involved in classified operations, accessed alien technology, participated in interrogations of high-value Zephyrian prisoners. There were any number of reasons why hostile forces might want to capture or eliminate her. The fact that she was attending civilian high school wouldn't protect her if someone had decided she was a security risk. More sounds from the hallway, doors slamming, voices getting closer. Maya made a decision. "I'm going out there," she said. "Absolutely not," Mrs. Kim snapped. "You'll stay right here with everyone else. If they're looking for me, keeping me here puts all of you in danger." Maya moved toward the door. "I know how to handle this kind of situation." "You're 17, Mrs. Kim started. "I'm 22 and I'm a decorated veteran with 8 years of combat experience," Maya interrupted. "I've handled hostile extractions before." She cracked the door open slightly, listening. The intruders were 2 classrooms away, moving systematically. Maya estimated she had perhaps 90 seconds before they reached this room. "Lock the door behind me," she instructed Mrs. Kim. "Keep everyone quiet and away from the windows. If something happens to me, wait for law enforcement." "Maya, don't," David pleaded. "Just hide with us." Maya looked at the terrified faces around her. Kids who should be worried about homework and dating, not fighting for their lives. "I didn't survive the Zephyrian War to let something happen to you in a high school classroom." She slipped into the hallway, moving with the silent efficiency she'd perfected during covert operations. The corridor was empty, but she could hear voices from the East Wing. Maya made her way toward the sound, every sense heightened, her prosthetic arm ready to deliver lethal force if necessary. As she rounded the corner, she saw them, 3 figures in tactical gear, carrying weapons that looked military-grade but unfamiliar. Not human military, she realized with a chill. The design was subtly wrong, incorporating elements that suggested alien technology. "Looking for me?" she called out, stepping into view with her hands visible but ready. The 3 figures turned, and Maya got her first clear look at their faces. Human, but with subtle modifications. Enhanced muscle definition, eyes that reflected light differently, skin with an almost metallic sheen. Augmented humans, probably enhanced with captured Zephyrian biotechnology. "Maya Chen," the leader said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. "You're coming with us." "I don't think so," Maya replied, calculating distances and angles. "Who sent you?" "Does it matter? Your war crimes against the Zephyrian Empire have not been forgotten." War crimes. Maya's mind flashed to memories she tried to keep buried. Decisions made in the heat of battle. Civilian populations caught in crossfire. The orbital bombardment of Zephyrian colonies that she had helped coordinate. The war had required terrible choices from everyone involved. "The war is over," she said. The armistice was signed by both species. "Not everyone accepted that armistice," the enhanced human replied. "Some of us believe justice still needs to be served," Maya realized. She was facing Zephyrian collaborators, humans, who had been captured during the war and converted to their cause through a combination of biotechnology and psychological conditioning. She had encountered them before, during the final campaigns. They were among the most dangerous enemies humanity had faced because they understood human tactics, while possessing alien enhancements. "So you're here to what? Execute me in a high school?" "We're here to bring you before a proper tribunal. What happens after that depends on your willingness to cooperate." Maya smiled grimly. "I stopped cooperating with Zephyrian justice systems about 8 years ago." The leader raised his weapon, but Maya was already moving. Her combat reflexes, honed by years of fighting superhuman enemies, kicked in with lethal precision. She dove behind a row of lockers as energy bolts scorched the air where she had been standing. Her prosthetic arm punched through the locker door, grabbing a fire extinguisher. She hurled it down the hallway, creating a cloud of chemical foam that obscured vision and triggered the building's emergency ventilation system. In the confusion, she moved. Maya's enhanced neural interface tracked the positions of all 3 attackers through sound and thermal signatures. She reached the first one before he could clear the foam from his enhanced vision, delivering a strike with her prosthetic hand that sent him crashing into the wall. The impact would have killed an unmodified human, but his alien augmentations kept him breathing. The second attacker swung around, firing blindly into the chemical cloud. Maya rolled under his line of fire and swept his legs. following up with a precise strike to his weapon hand that sent the alien energy weapon skittering across the floor. The leader was more cautious, backing away from the engagement and calling for support on a communication device Maya didn't recognize. She couldn't let him escape with intelligence about her location and capabilities. Maya charged through the dissipating foam, closing the distance before he could raise his weapon. They grappled, his enhanced strength matching her prosthetic arm while his augmented reflexes countered her military training. For a moment, the outcome was uncertain. Then Maya remembered something from her xenobiology briefings. Zephyrian biotechnology was vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies. Her cybernetic eye could generate a focused EM pulse if she overcharged its power system. The pulse burst from her artificial eye like invisible lightning, disrupting the alien bioenhancements that gave her opponent his superhuman abilities. He collapsed, temporarily paralyzed as his modified nervous system rebooted. Maya stood over the three incapacitated attackers, breathing hard but victorious. In the distance, she could hear sirens approaching, real law enforcement finally arriving to deal with the situation. As she waited for backup, Maya reflected on the irony of her situation. She had thought the war was over, that she could attend high school and learn to be a normal civilian. But apparently some battles followed you wherever you went. Her phone buzzed with a message from Principal Rodriguez. "Are you safe?" "Police are securing the building," Maya typed back. "Situation resolved. Sorry about the mess in the east hallway." Just another day at Roosevelt High School. The media circus arrived before Maya had finished giving her statement to federal agents. News vans lined the street outside Roosevelt High School, satellite dishes extending like mechanical flowers reaching toward the sky. Maya watched through the principal's office window as reporters set up their equipment, preparing to broadcast the story of the high school war hero to a nation hungry for drama. Agent Sarah Kellerman of the Department of Alien Affairs closed her tablet and leaned back in her chair. So these were definitely Zephyrian collaborators using biotech enhancements. They've been operating in cells across North America, targeting veterans who participated in what they consider war crimes. "How many other people are on their list?" Maya asked. "Classified. But you were priority target number 3, which suggests they consider you particularly significant." Kellerman studied Maya with professional interest. "Your service record is impressive. The orbital bombardment of the Kepler 442 system, the interrogation protocols you developed for Zephyrian prisoners, the civilian evacuation under fire at New Shanghai Colony. You made a lot of enemies." Principal Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Agent Kellerman, Maya is just trying to complete her education. Surely there's something your department can do to protect her while she's here. Protection details are expensive and complicated. Besides, based on what I witnessed today, Ms. Chen appears capable of protecting herself." Maya's cybernetic eye had recorded the entire engagement, and the federal agents had reviewed the footage with obvious fascination. 3 enhanced humans with alien biotechnology, neutralized by a single veteran in under 4 minutes. The recording would probably end up in training manuals somewhere. "The problem," Kellerman continued, "is that this incident has made you visible. Before today, you were just another veteran attending school under the reintegration program. Now every news outlet in the country is going to want to interview the war hero who single-handedly defeated alien-enhanced terrorists in a high school hallway." Through the window, Maya could see David being interviewed by a reporter. His animated gestures suggested he was telling the story with considerable enthusiasm. Other students had gathered around various news crews eager to be on television. For them, this was the most exciting thing that had ever happened at Roosevelt High School. "What do you recommend?" Maya asked. "Transfer schools. New identity. We can relocate you somewhere with better security infrastructure." Maya considered this option. It would be easier, certainly. No more pretending to care about teenage social dynamics. No more sitting through classes about subjects she had mastered in practical application. No more awkward conversations with civilians who had no concept of what war really meant. But something made her hesitate. "What happens to the other students if more collaborators show up looking for me?" "They won't. These cells operate on specific intelligence. Once they know you're not here anymore, they'll redirect their efforts elsewhere." "That's not what I asked." Kellerman's expression hardened slightly. "My job is protecting valuable military assets, not running security for high schools." Maya stood up abruptly, her prosthetic hand clenching into a fist. "Those students aren't acceptable losses. If there's even a chance that leaving could put them in danger, I'm staying. Maya, Principal Rodriguez said gently. No one would blame you for wanting to go somewhere safer. I would blame me. Maya moved to the window, watching the news crews interview students who had been in lockdown just hours earlier. I spent 8 years fighting to protect human civilians. I'm not going to stop now because it's inconvenient. Her phone buzzed with incoming messages, interview requests from major networks, calls from military publicists, texts from former squad mates who had seen the news. Maya turned off the device without reading them. There's another option, Kellerman said slowly. We could provide discreet security support while you finish your education here. It would require some adjustments to your daily routine. What kind of adjustments? Armed federal agents posing as substitute teachers, enhanced surveillance systems, restricted access to certain areas of the school. Essentially, we'd turn Roosevelt High into a soft target defense zone. Principal Rodriguez looked alarmed. You want to militarize our school? I want to keep a valuable asset alive while she completes her civilian reintegration process, Kellerman replied. The alternative is having more collaborator cells attempt to capture or eliminate her, possibly with civilian casualties. Maya weighed the options. Military protection would keep everyone safer, but it would also transform the school into something resembling the forward operating bases she'd called home during the war. The students would be living under the same kind of security protocols that had defined her teenage years. No, she said finally. No military presence in the school. Maya, Kellerman started. I said no. These kids deserve to have a normal high school experience. That's what we fought for. The right for human children to grow up without living under military rule. Then what do you propose? Maya turned back to face them, her expression set with the same determination that had carried her through impossible battles. I propose we trust that one veteran with 8 years of combat experience can handle whatever comes next. Kellerman shook her head. The next cell might send more than 3 operatives. They might use heavier weapons, more sophisticated tactics. Then I'll adapt. That's what soldiers do. 2 hours later, Maya found herself facing the media gauntlet. Principal Rodriguez had convinced her to give one brief statement to prevent reporters from harassing students and faculty. Maya stood at the podium they'd set up in the parking lot, looking out at a sea of cameras and microphones. I'm Maya Chen, she began, her voice carrying the authority she'd developed addressing troops before dangerous missions. I'm a veteran of the Zephyrian War, and I'm currently completing my high school education through the military reintegration program. Questions erupted from the crowd of reporters, but Maya held up her hand for silence. Today, some individuals with hostile intent entered our school. They were neutralized without harm to any students or faculty. The situation is being handled by appropriate federal authorities. That's all I have to say. Ms. Chen, shouted a reporter from the front row. How does it feel to be a war hero attending high school? Maya considered the question seriously. I'm not a hero. I'm a soldier who did her job. Right now, my job is completing my education alongside the students I fought to protect. I'd appreciate it if you'd let us get back to that. She turned and walked back toward the school building, ignoring the barrage of follow-up questions. As she reached the entrance, she found David waiting for her with a small group of other students. That was amazing, he said, his eyes bright with excitement. You totally shut them down. They'll be back, Maya warned. This story is going to follow me for a while. So what? You're still Maya. You're still our friend. David glanced at the other students who nodded in agreement. Besides, it's kinda cool having a real war hero in our physics class. Maya looked at their young faces. David with his earnest enthusiasm, Jessica, who had been complaining about college applications just that morning, Marcus, whose grandfather had served in Vietnam, Amber, who worried about standardized tests. They were looking at her with a mixture of awe and acceptance that she hadn't expected. Just remember, she said, hero or not, I still need help with American literature. I never did figure out what the green light symbolizes in The Great Gatsby. The group laughed, and Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since returning to Earth, a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with military rank or combat effectiveness. As they walked back into the school together, Maya realized that maybe her mission parameters had changed. She wasn't just protecting these students from external threats anymore. She was learning to be part of the world she had fought to save. That evening, as she sat in her apartment reviewing the day's events, Maya received a message from her former squad mate, Sergeant Kim Rodriguez. Saw the news. Same old Chen. Still volunteering for the dangerous assignments. Proud of you, sister. Maya typed back. Someone has to keep these kids safe. Besides, how hard can high school be compared to fighting aliens? She sent the message and then stared at her homework assignments. A chemistry lab report, 3 chapters of American history, and a literary analysis of Shakespearean sonnets. Maybe high school was going to be harder than she thought. The revelation that Maya Chen was attending their school had transformed Roosevelt High's social dynamics overnight. What had been whispered rumors were now confirmed facts broadcast on national news. Maya discovered this when she arrived for her morning classes to find a crowd of students waiting by her locker, their phones out, recording her arrival like some kind of celebrity. Maya, can you tell us about the Battle of Titan Station? Called out a sophomore named Riley. Is it true you can bench press a car? Asked another student. Did you really kill a Zephyrian commander with your bare hands? Maya navigated through the crowd with practiced efficiency, keeping her expression neutral while her enhanced hearing picked up dozens of conversations happening simultaneously around her. The attention was exactly what she had hoped to avoid, but apparently inevitable after yesterday's incident. David appeared at her elbow, looking simultaneously proud and protective. I tried to keep them back, but word spread pretty fast after the news interviews aired last night. It's fine, Maya said, though she could feel her stress levels rising. Her cybernetic eye was automatically cataloging faces, identifying potential threats among the curious teenagers, old habits from crowd control operations in hostile territory. Has anyone been bothering you about yesterday? The opposite. Apparently being friends with a war hero makes me temporarily interesting. David grinned. Marcus asked if I could get your autograph for his grandfather. Maya reached her locker and began the routine of gathering textbooks for her morning classes. Around her, the crowd gradually dispersed as the warning bell rang, but she could feel eyes on her from every direction. The comfortable anonymity she had cultivated over the past month was completely gone. Her first class was English literature with Mrs. Foster, where they were continuing their discussion of war narratives. The irony of the timing wasn't lost on anyone. Today we're examining how different authors have portrayed the psychological impact of combat on soldiers, Mrs. Foster announced, carefully not looking directly at Maya. Can anyone identify common themes in the works we've read so far? Hands shot up around the room, but Maya noticed several students glancing her way as if expecting her to provide expert commentary. She kept her focus on her notebook, sketching tactical formations in the margins, while her classmates discussed literary concepts. The disconnect between civilian and military experience is a recurring theme, Jessica offered, like in The Things They Carried, where the soldiers can't explain what war really feels like to people who weren't there. Excellent observation, Mrs. Foster said. This communication gap often leaves veterans feeling isolated upon returning home. Maya's pen stopped moving. Mrs. Foster was looking directly at her now, clearly debating whether to invite her perspective on the discussion. Sometimes, Maya said quietly, surprising herself by speaking up. The problem isn't that civilians can't understand. It's that veterans can't figure out how to translate their experiences into something that makes sense in peacetime. The classroom fell silent. Mrs. Foster nodded encouragingly. Can you elaborate on that? Maya chose her words carefully. When you've lived with life and death decisions every day for years, it's hard to care about smaller problems. Not because those problems aren't real or important to the people facing them, but because your brain is still calibrated for existential threats. She gestured at her notebook, where she'd unconsciously drawn defensive positions around the margins. You see tactical situations everywhere. You analyze threats that don't exist. You prepare for attacks that aren't coming. The skills that kept you alive in combat become obstacles to normal life. The room remained quiet, her classmates processing this glimpse into a world they'd only read about in literature. Maya realized she'd revealed more about herself in 2 minutes than she had in the entire previous month. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Mrs. Foster said gently. That insight helps us understand these texts in a much deeper way. As class ended, several students approached Maya with questions that seemed genuinely thoughtful, rather than sensational. A girl named Sarah asked about support systems for veterans. Marcus wanted to know if her experiences helped her understand his grandfather's silence about Vietnam. Even Brett Hoffman, the former bully, awkwardly asked if there was anything students could do to help veterans adjust to civilian life. Maya found herself in the unexpected position of being an educator rather than just a student. These teenagers were trying to understand something that most adults couldn't grasp, and their questions showed a maturity that surprised her. During lunch, Maya sat with her usual group, David, Jessica, Marcus, and a few others who had gradually become part of her social circle. The conversation naturally turned to her military service, but in a way that felt more like genuine curiosity than celebrity worship. "What's the hardest part about being here?" Marcus asked. "I mean, after everything you've been through, what makes high school difficult?" Maya considered the question while picking at her cafeteria pizza. "The pace, mostly. In combat, everything happens fast. Decisions, consequences, life and death, it's all immediate. Here, everything moves slowly. You spend weeks studying things that might be important someday. You worry about grades that affect college applications that affect career prospects. It's all very theoretical." "That sounds frustrating," Jessica said. "It is sometimes. But it's also what we fought for. The luxury of planning for the future instead of just surviving the present." David leaned forward. "Do you miss it?" "The military, I mean." "I miss the clarity," Maya admitted. "In war, you always know what your mission is. Protect your squad, complete the objective, defeat the enemy. Success and failure are obvious. Here, I'm never sure if I'm doing the right thing or just pretending to be normal." "You seem pretty normal to us," Amber said from across the table. Maya almost laughed. "I have a cybernetic eye that can see in 17 different spectrums, a prosthetic arm that can punch through titanium, and bio-nanites in my bloodstream that are still repairing cellular damage from alien weapons. I'm about as far from normal as it's possible to be." "But you still worry about homework and get annoyed when the cafeteria runs out of chocolate milk," David pointed out. "That's pretty normal." "Plus," Jessica added, "you're the only person I know who actually reads the assigned literature instead of just skimming spark notes. That's weird in a completely normal way." Maya realized they were right in a sense. Despite her enhancements and experiences, she had somehow found ways to connect with these teenagers on fundamentally human levels. The gap between soldier and civilian wasn't as unbridgeable as she had assumed. That afternoon, during her free period, Maya was summoned to Principal Rodriguez's office. She found Agent Kellerman waiting there with a tablet full of intelligence reports. "We've identified the cell that attacked yesterday," Kellerman announced without preamble. They were part of a larger organization called the Reconciliation Front, humans and Zephyrians working together to prosecute what they consider outstanding war crimes. "How many more are out there?" Maya asked. "At least 6 active cells in North America, possibly more worldwide. The good news is that yesterday's failure has forced them to reassess their tactical approach. They're not likely to attempt another direct assault soon. And the bad news? They're shifting to psychological warfare. Expect attempts to discredit you, reveal classified information about your service record, or target people close to you to force your compliance." Maya felt a chill. "People close to me meaning the students here? It's a possibility we have to consider." Principal Rodriguez looked alarmed. "Agent Kellerman, you assured us that the threat was contained after yesterday's incident." "The immediate physical threat was contained. But these organizations are adaptive. They've learned that direct confrontation with Ms. Chen is inadvisable, so they'll try indirect methods." Maya stood and moved to the window, looking out at the students walking between classes. David was headed toward the library with his usual stack of books. Jessica was talking animatedly with friends near the science building. Marcus was sitting under a tree, probably working on homework. Normal teenagers living normal lives, unaware that their association with her might have made them targets. "What do you need from me?" Maya asked. "Vigilance. Report anything unusual. New students who ask too many questions. Staff members behaving strangely. Changes in routine that don't make sense. And consider limiting your social interactions until we can neutralize the remaining cells." "No." Maya turned back to face them. "I'm not going to isolate myself from the people who've accepted me here. That's exactly what they want. To make me choose between protecting others and being part of their lives." "Maya," Principal Rodriguez said gently, "maybe it would be better. With respect, Principal Rodriguez making me an outcast won't protect anyone. It will just make it easier for hostile forces to manipulate the situation. Maya's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to strategic planning. I stay engaged with my classmates, but I stay alert. We maintain normal operations while implementing enhanced security protocols. Kellerman raised an eyebrow. Enhanced security protocols? I teach basic threat awareness to my social group without alarming them. I coordinate with school security to identify potential vulnerabilities. I maintain operational readiness while appearing to be a normal student. Maya's cybernetic eye gleamed. These people want to use my civilian life against me. Instead, I'm going to use my civilian life to protect everyone around me. As Maya left the principal's office, she felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settling on her shoulders. But this time, instead of protecting fellow soldiers, she was protecting teenagers who worried about homework and college applications. Some missions never really ended. They just evolved. 6 months after the collaborator attack, Maya Chen stood at the podium in Roosevelt High School's auditorium, looking out at an audience that included not just her graduating classmates, but federal agents, military officials, and news crews from across the nation. She was about to become the first veteran of the Zephyrian War to complete high school under the reintegration program, a milestone that apparently warranted significant media attention. Principal Rodriguez had introduced her as both valedictorian and class protector, titles that Maya found equally surprising. The valedictorian part was unexpected because she genuinely struggled with some subjects. Her literary analysis papers were notoriously technical, and her understanding of social dynamics remained largely theoretical. The protector title was more accurate, though she'd hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Over the past 6 months, Maya had quietly thwarted 3 more attempts by reconciliation front cells to target students at Roosevelt High. A fake substitute teacher with enhanced surveillance equipment. A college recruiter who asked too many questions about Maya's daily routine. A group of documentary filmmakers who wanted to interview students about their experiences with a war veteran. Each incident had been handled with the kind of subtle efficiency that kept civilians unaware they'd been in danger. When I first arrived at Roosevelt High, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system, I thought my mission was simple: complete my education and learn to be a normal civilian. I believed the hardest part would be pretending to care about things like homework and social hierarchies after surviving 8 years of interstellar warfare. In the audience, she could see David beaming with pride, sitting next to his parents who had insisted on thanking Maya personally for protecting their son. Jessica was in the front row with the other honor students, probably planning her own valedictorian speech for next year. Marcus sat with his grandfather, a Vietnam veteran who had driven 3 hours to attend the graduation of someone who understood what he'd been through. I was wrong about almost everything, Maya continued. The hardest part wasn't pretending to care about civilian concerns. It was learning that those concerns are exactly what make peace worth fighting for. The ability to worry about grades and college applications and who you're taking to prom isn't trivial. It's the most important thing in the universe, because it means you're free to plan for a future instead of just surviving the present. Agent Kellerman was in the back of the auditorium, still technically assigned to Maya's security detail, though the threat level had been downgraded after the successful neutralization of the last reconciliation front cell. Maya had played a key role in that operation, using her position at Roosevelt High as bait to draw the terrorists into a federal trap. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her civilian life had become a military asset. My classmates taught me things that no amount of combat experience could have prepared me for, Maya said, making eye contact with faces she had come to know over the past year. They taught me that strength isn't just about surviving impossible odds or defeating superior enemies. Sometimes strength means asking for help with calculus homework. Sometimes it means admitting you don't understand why The Great Gatsby's green light is important, even though you've read the book 3 times. Laughter rippled through the audience. Maya's struggles with literary symbolism had become something of a running joke among her study group. Though her analysis papers were legendary for their logical precision and completely unorthodox interpretations, they taught me that heroism isn't just about making split-second decisions in life-or-death situations. Sometimes heroism means sitting with a friend who's having a panic attack about college interviews. Sometimes it means standing up to bullies even when the stakes seem small compared to galactic warfare. She paused, looking directly at David, who had grown from a terrified target of school bullies into someone confident enough to join the debate team and run for student council. Maya's intervention had been just the beginning of his transformation. Most importantly, they taught me that the war didn't end when the armistice was signed. It ended when veterans like me learned to live in the world we fought to protect, and when civilians like my classmates learned that protecting each other is everyone's responsibility, not just the military's. Maya's cybernetic eye briefly switched to tactical mode, automatically scanning the audience for potential threats, old habits. But instead of identifying targets and escape routes, she found herself cataloging faces of people who had become important to her. Mrs. Foster, who had patiently helped her understand that literature was about human emotion, not just factual analysis. Mr. Peterson, who had invited her to share historical perspectives that went far beyond textbook knowledge. Even Brett Hoffman, who had quietly transformed from bully to someone who volunteered to help younger students with their problems. The future I'm graduating into is different from the one I imagined when I enlisted 8 years ago, Maya said. I thought I would spend my life as a soldier, fighting enemies and protecting civilians from threats they couldn't handle themselves. Instead, I've learned that the most important battles are often fought in classrooms and hallways and cafeterias, by ordinary people who choose to care about each other. In the audience, Maya spotted Captain Torres, her former commanding officer, who had driven down from the Veterans Hospital, where he was recovering from injuries sustained in the war's final campaign.
He nodded approvingly, understanding what Maya was trying to communicate, that the mission continued.
Just in a different form. To my fellow graduates, Maya continued, addressing her classmates directly. You're entering a world that was almost destroyed by people who believed that differences between species, between cultures, between ideologies could only be resolved through violence. You have the opportunity to prove them wrong. You can build a civilization where strength is measured by how well you protect those who need protection, where intelligence is measured by how effectively you solve problems without creating new ones, and where success is measured by how much better you leave the world than you found it. She took a breath, preparing for her conclusion. The Zephyrian War taught humanity that we're capable of incredible things when we work together against existential threats. High school taught me that we're capable of even more incredible things when we work together for positive goals, instead of just against negative ones. Maya stepped back from the podium as applause filled the auditorium. As she looked out at the crowd, students, teachers, parents, federal agents, military officials, and news crews, she realized that this wasn't an ending. It was a transition from one mission to another. Later, at the graduation reception, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates taking selfies and exchanging contact information. David approached with his parents in tow. Maya, I want you to meet my mom and dad, he said, practically glowing with pride. David's mother, a small woman with kind eyes, took Maya's prosthetic hand without hesitation. Thank you, she said simply. David told us what you did for him, not just with the bullies, but helping him find his confidence. David did that himself, Maya replied. I just provided tactical support. David's father, a man who clearly spent his time behind a desk rather than in combat zones, studied Maya with obvious curiosity. So what's next for you? College? Military service? I imagine you have a lot of options. Maya considered the question. Agent Kellerman had offered her a position with the Department of Alien Affairs. Captain Torres had suggested she could help train the next generation of military officers. Several universities had offered full scholarships. All of them were appealing options, but they all felt like retreats from something important she had discovered at Roosevelt High. Actually, Maya said, making a decision that surprised even her. I'm thinking about becoming a teacher. David's eyes widened. Really? Really? It turns out I'm good at helping people understand complex situations and prepare for challenges they haven't faced yet. Plus, someone needs to make sure high schools are ready for whatever comes next. As the reception continued around her, Maya realized that her war hadn't ended with the defeat of the Zephyrian Empire. It had evolved into something more subtle but equally important, the ongoing battle to build a world worth living in, one classroom at a time. Her enhanced hearing picked up a conversation between two federal agents discussing new threats emerging from the outer colonies. Her cybernetic eye automatically cataloged potential security vulnerabilities in the school's architecture.